And we're live. Hello, everyone. I'm Leonardo Lima, and I'd like to welcome to another session of the Day Champions Conference 2022. Today, we're here all about Jakarta EE10, and my fellow Java champion that will present this glimpse into the future is Ivar Grimstad. He's the Jakarta EE developer advocate, and he will try his best to bring you to this side of the force. Ivar will take questions after the talk, but please feel free to fire them in chat, and we'll come back to them after Ivar finishes with the content he has prepared. Ivar, have a great session.
Thank you, Leo, and thank you for the introduction. And welcome everybody to this talk called Jakarta EE10 is coming your way. And let's just get started. I plan on going for like 45 minutes or so, and then we'll have the Q&A at the end. So, who am I? I'm a Java champion, as all the speakers at this conference is. It's a truly great conference to be speaking at, and it's a very good opportunity for us to meet as many as possible out there. And I'm Ivar Grimstad, as Leo said. I work for the Eclipse Foundation as the Jakarta EE developer advocate. You can see my Twitter handle there, my GitHub, and LinkedIn if you want to contact me with any questions regarding Eclipse Foundation, the Jakarta EE working group, or anything else that I talk about today. I'm also a member of the Java Community Executive Committee, where I represent Eclipse Foundation there. And also, I'm a very small committer on Apache NetBeans, and I run a Java user group here in Sweden. So the topic of today is Jakarta EE10, and it's coming your way, and it's coming in Q2 2022. We originally said that we wanted to have Jakarta EE10 delivered in Q1 2022, but we've adjusted that a little bit to Q2. So it will be around somewhere in May or June. And where are we at right now? So Jakarta EE is a set of specifications, and they are developed using the Jakarta EE specification process. And this is a development process like any development process out there. And we have these kind of checkpoints with the reviews spread around the process to make sure that everything meets the requirements for each stage. And currently, the specifications are in the development phase and are producing milestones or release candidates. And some of them are available on Maven Central as today, and some of them are in our staging repository. It depends a little bit of how the strategy for that specific specification project is. But we're currently in the development phase. And we expect that by the end of February, all these specifications should be reaching or be ready to start their release review with the Jakarta EE specification committee. And the reason why we want to have this done in February is that then we have the time to kind of wrap everything together and be able to ship the final ratified specification of Jakarta EE in Q2. So that's where we're at now. We're in the development, producing milestones, and starting to produce specification versions. There is a couple of them that are under release review right now, and some of them are even released. And Jakarta EE looks like this. And all the blue boxes here are specifications with changes since last version. And as you see, most of them have changes. So it's a massive release. It's a lot of stuff. Another thing to note here is that all the specification numbers here with the .0 after them are major updates. And major updates, since we're obeying the rules of semantic versioning, means that there are potentially backwards incompatible changes. And you can see about half of them are major updates. The other half have a .1 number, which is a minor update since previous version. It's not necessarily a minor in terms of amount of functionality, but there are no backwards incompatible changes. There are a couple that are not updated. They are in gray here. And you can see the one with the orange and the blue color, CDI Lite, is a new specification, but it's sort of it is a subset of CDI 4.0, which is called CDI Lite. And I'll get a little bit more into the details around CDI Lite later. And there is a brand new specification called config. That has an asterisk behind it because as it looks now, it probably won't make it to Jakarta EE10, but that remains to be seen, and we will know for sure after February 28th. So if we kind of gray out some of the more enterprisey specifications like mail and batch and messaging, and just focus on the specifications I'm showing now. This is the Jakarta EE10 web profile. And since Jakarta or Java EE6, we've had two profiles, or one profile and one platform of Java EE, which we've inherited here in Jakarta EE. So the web profile is a subset of the platform, where the specifications or the group of specifications are more targeting traditional web applications. And if we kind of narrow it down even further and take away those specifications that are really targeting like web application traditionally, like the Jakarta faces or servlets, server pages, and that kind of specifications, we're left with a set of specifications that are what you need to create a RESTful web service or a headless service or whatever you want to call it. And this is what we will call the Jakarta EE10 core profile. So this is a brand new profile introduced in Jakarta EE10. And I'll go through each of these specifications of Jakarta EE profile to see what it is and why are we doing this core profile. So the main theme of Jakarta EE core profile is to target smaller runtimes. And with smaller runtimes, we're thinking of runtimes like Halodon, Quarkus, Micronaut, and the like. And these are by no means necessarily going to be certified on Jakarta EE core profile, but it's just listed as potentially Jakarta EE core profile compatible implementations. And let's just dive into each of these specifications and see if we can extract what Jakarta EE core profile is all about. So the RESTful web services or Jakarta Rest, or previously called Jakarta Rest, is one of the key specifications of core profile. And what's planned for Jakarta RESTful Web Services 3.1 is to update the API with requested features from the community while maintaining compatibility. So this is a .1 release, so there are no backwards incompatible changes. They had originally planned for a 4.0 release, but decided to wait with that until a later version of Jakarta EE, potentially Jakarta EE 11. And as you can see here, all the specifications follow the same URL pattern. You can find it under https jakarta.ee/specifications and then / the short name of the specification, in this case, RESTful WS. So what's coming in Jakarta Rest 3.1 then? One of the exciting things there is actually a Java SC Bootstrap API, which means that you can run your Jakarta REST applications without an application server. And the application class I've shown here is the application class from Jakarta Rest, the one that you would use to configure your Jakarta Rest application running in the application or in the WAR archive on the application server. In this case, you can just instantiate like this, send it to the SC Bootstrap start method, and run it like this. And this is a new thing, and I think this will be fairly popular out there, especially by developers that are not used to Jakarta EE or that kind of deployment model currently. So this is a pretty cool new nifty thing. Another thing they're adding is support for multi-part form data. And this has been supported by the implementations previously in slightly different ways, but now they're standardizing it. So you can actually upload and download files like I've shown here. So that was kind of there are all other smaller changes, but these are kind of the two major things that are delivering in 3.1. In JSON processing, it's a minor update as well. And the main thing they've done there is to rip out the implementation to a separate product, and also add some small features requested by the community. And the new implementation, or one of the new implementations of Jakarta JSON Processing, is called Eclipse Parson. So that is a brand new project implementing the JSON processing specification, and all the smaller features they've put into this release in the specification can be found in the JSONP issue tracker. So let's look at JSON Binding 3.0, and they're doing a major update because they have some backwards incompatible changes planned. And I see I haven't updated the headline here because they first were aiming for a 2.1 release, but then they decided to bring in some backwards incompatibility and had to raise the release from 2.1 to 3.0. So I'll update this slide before I publish it. But what they are doing is to provide features that are requested by the community, and some of them were backwards incompatible. And the stuff they are providing in this release is some examples here are deserialization of null is standardized, so you can have you will know what's happening when you're using JSON value, null value. The JSON type, JSON B type deserialization and JSON B type adapter annotations are added. Some default implementations of the property visibility strategy, and also some new annotations and some deprecation here and there. Annotations. We're originally not planning to do anything, but the community wanted something to be delivered, and as well as the changes in CDI made it easier to do a update here. So it's a small update where at priority is allowed to use everywhere, and also added annotations for at nullable and at null, not null, that weren't there before. So these small changes were kind of triggered by requests from the other specifications. Interceptors is also one of those that weren't planning on doing anything, but since annotations 2.1 did some changes, Interceptors had to do a release to pick up those changes. And the reasoning for all these changes were CDI Lite. So let's go into CDI Lite and look at what's the reasoning behind CDI 4.0 Lite. And that is the key of the core profile, and that is to make CDI work in more restricted environments. And the CDI projects have weekly calls that are open for everybody. So if you're interested in knowing the exact details of what's going on in CDI, you can join these calls. I think they're on Tuesdays. So please just reach out to me and I'll point you in a direction where you can find the details to join that call. The key elements of CDI Lite is the new extensions API, and that is to kind of make CDI dynamic at build time, because CDI today is very dynamic at startup or runtime, and that makes it hard to compile to native using, for example, GraalVM. And that is what we want to achieve with the core profile, is to make it possible to create native images. And to do that, we had to create a new portable extensions API. So we can programmatically define your extensions and not configure them with the Bootstrap file as you do today. I'll show the Bootstrap version of it in code later. Another breaking change backwards is that the behavior of the beans XML, an empty beans XML, is changed. That means that if you're relying on having an empty beans XML in your application, meaning all classes are injectable, they will now be the default behavior would be annotated. So then you would have to actually add a beans XML file and add the all keyword there. If you're relying on, if you're using a beans XML today that is annotated, you can delete it because the default behavior would be as it were annotated. And also removal of some deprecated stuff that has been lying around for a while. But the key part is the new extensions API and the empty beans XML file, and it's all about removing the dynamic features at runtime and making it possible to decide on build time. And this is a true subset of CDI4, so everything with the new extensions API will work fine with the full CDI profile. And the last specification of core profile is config. And Jakarta config will provide portable configuration from environment-aware sources. And this is probably familiar if you're familiar with microprofile config today. And Jakarta config is going to provide the same sort of functionality as microprofile config does today, with some additions and some tweaks here and there to make it more fitting a Jakarta EE environment. Among others, a tree structure of configuration properties is going to be added. And also there are some discussions around having a configuration model for meta configuration, so you can kind of configure how the configurations should be. These also have weekly calls in this project, and it's usually pretty entertaining to join those calls. So I recommend join that call and figure out what's going on with the Jakarta config. I won't go through all of these specifications, but one I want to dive into a little bit is Security 3.0. So Jakarta Security has been around for a while. It came in Jakarta E8 as version 1.0. Then it was transferred to 2.0 in Jakarta E9 without adding any features. So version 3.0 is actually the first one adding features since 1.0. And it's all about adding features and evolving the API, because the first version of security was kind of basic, giving you the foundation you needed to be able to configure your application as an application developer. So you kind of configure it from the application, and you don't need to use vendor-specific security configuration to secure your application. And the stuff that is being planned for security is a couple of new authentication mechanisms. I know there is a pull request for OpenID Connect being discussed today. I'm not sure if they are going to make it with OAuth 2 or if that's already in. But there are things going on that mailing list and the pull request in the GitHub repositories. So there will be some support for OpenID Connect. It looks like that. And also extend the authentication mechanisms currently there by making it more flexible to choose which authentication mechanism you want to use, and have multiple authentication mechanisms. So different parts of the application can have different mechanisms for authentication users. And also some better integration with CDI. So that was the specifications. As you saw on the slide, that the blue specifications are getting. There are lots of specifications getting updates, but there are some other things that are coming in 10 as well. And one of them is the Java SE version. And there's been a lot of discussion around this. And I want to show this slide. And that is Jakarta EE 10 will compile its APIs using Java SE 11. So the binary level of the API jar files that you download from Maven Central will be Java SE 11. So there may be Java SE 11 features there. So it won't necessarily work with Java 8. And some of the specification will produce either jar files that supports both 8 and 11, or they will produce separate jars if it's interesting to support 8, such as Jakarta Mail, for example, which is widely used outside of the Jakarta space, for example, in Android applications, and then you would have to support Java SE 8. But the important thing here is that the TCKs are being ensured that they will be running with Java SE 11 and above. And the above here, is the important thing, because that means that you as app developers can use Java SE 17 if you like, or 18, or whatever is there when you are using it, because all it matters is that the implementation you're running with has certified with Java SE 17, for example. And that is what we are aiming for. And there are already implementations out there with Jakarta EE 9 on Java SE 17. So it's there. So whenever anybody says, well, Jakarta EE is only on 11, well, that's not true, because the important thing is that even though we compile the APIs to 11 source level, 17 is fully supported. So I've been talking a lot of Jakarta EE 10. Well, let's go a little bit backwards and look at what's in Jakarta EE 9.1, because the step from 8 to 9 is kind of important if you want to jump to 10. So when 10 is now coming your way, it's time to upgrade to 9 if you're on previous versions. And Jakarta EE 9.1 was a special release because that is the first time we ever done a dot release. And the reason why we did the dot release is kind of the same reasoning how we're supporting 11 and above for the TCKs of 10. We needed to ensure that the TCKs were possible to run with 11, because Jakarta EE 9 supported Java SE 8, and the API jars in 9 and 9.1 are exactly the same. So they're compiled to Java SE 8, language level and binary. But for 9.1, we ensured that the TCK were runnable for Java SE 11 and above. So that is the current latest release of Jakarta EE. And the key points of Jakarta EE 9 or 9.1 was to lower the entry barriers. We wanted to make it as easy as possible for new players to enter the market. And with new players, we mean new implementations of the APIs. And we have now 18 different implementations of Jakarta EE 9. So it's proven successful. It's easier for new players, so we don't have just the usual suspects of application servers implementing Jakarta EE. We wanted to establish it as a platform for innovation. And I think we also have succeeded with that if we look at what's happening in Jakarta EE today. We have several new specifications coming in. I mentioned config here and CDI Lite. That's a new innovation happening in Jakarta EE. We have a brand new specification being approved. It's plan review for Jakarta RPC, which will implement support for gRPC in Jakarta EE. And there are other specifications being discussed and talked about that are in the pipeline. So I think we've succeeded in creating it as a platform for innovation. We also wanted to make it easy to migrate. And with migration, we of course mean the migration from JavaX to Jakarta namespace, which we had to change for Jakarta EE9. Let's dive into this namespace change. And the question many of you may be asking yourself is, why should I care? I mean, I'm using Spring, so why should I care about Jakarta namespace change? Well, here's some news for you. Or probably not news because you probably know this already, but I'll repeat it here anyway. That Spring 6 and Spring Boot 3 will be using Java SC 17 and Jakarta EE9 as a baseline. And there are many of the Jakarta EE APIs are exposed in the Spring framework. So in Q4 2022, when Spring Framework 6 and Spring Boot 3 are planned to be released, the APIs that they are based on will be on the Jakarta namespace. So that change will hit the Spring community as well. And the change in these Spring Framework repositories have been done. And it's not 4 days ago as this, but it's a screenshot. So it's a couple of months since that was done. There is a milestone out. I think it's even at milestone 2 now. And they are have been migrated to the Jakarta EE9 APIs. And even if you're not using Spring Framework, if you're using Jetty or Tomcat or Hibernate, for example, directly, all of these have moved to the Jakarta namespace. So if you want to stay on the latest versions of Jetty or Tomcat, you're going to have to migrate your applications to the Jakarta namespace. And that maybe is a cue for time for demo. So I've been talking about this namespace, and since Jakarta 10 hasn't been released yet, let's stay with this namespace and see how we can prepare for Jakarta 10. And I said that is to move today from a previous version of Jakarta to 9. So what I'll do in this demo is to take an application that is on Jakarta EE8, running on Glassfish 5.1, and then I'll migrate it to Jakarta EE9 and run it on Glassfish 6.2. And my application is fairly simple. It's a hello world application. And as any good Java developers, I don't just do this as a print statement. I want to create a real architecture around it. So what I've done is to put the message I want to put forward in the database. Then I'm using Jakarta persistence in the Dukes repository to retrieve the data from the database. I have some business logic in my Dukes service, which is a Jakarta Enterprise bean. And I'm using Jakarta Rest to produce the JSON that is serialized using Jakarta JSON Processing, JSON Binding, sorry. And just for fun, I also threw in a Jakarta CDI extension that prints a message in the log to the sysadmin that are deploying the application. So this is the typical hello world application using Jakarta EE architecture. There are several ways I can do this, and one of them are transformation. And there are, to my knowledge, 2 projects out there, the Eclipse Transformer and the Apache Tomcat migration tool that will help you do this migration or transformation. And with transformation, I mean taking the binary that you have running on Jakarta EE8 or previous on the JavaX namespace. It will take that binary and transform it, the bytecode, to the Jakarta namespace, and you can run it directly without even touching the code. So this can be cool to just try out and see if it works. Some of the implementations of Jakarta EE9 actually use the transformer technology under the cover, so you can support both the JavaX and the Jakarta namespace. However, if you have access to the code, I would actually recommend that you do the migration of the code and not the binaries. But it can be a first step just to test it out and see if it works. The IDE will give you some support. There are tooling in IntelliJ that will migrate your code from Java EE to Jakarta EE. So you can just choose a project and do the refactoring for you, and it will do it automatically. It won't do everything, but it will take what's needed. And this is the good thing about using this tool is, if you're thinking of just doing a search and replace, is that you can see that this says does not affect usages of Java X SQL, Java X Swing, Java X XML, etc., because some of these are still in the Java SE kind of technologies. So it hasn't, and it won't be in Jakarta EE. So hereby the Java X namespace hasn't changed for this and will never do either. If you want to do it manually, these are the steps that are needed, and these are the steps that will be more or less the same if you were going to a Jakarta E10 application. But I would add a step there: verify your Beans XML file, because if you're relying on annotating it all, you may have to delete or do some modifications there. All the code for this application is on my GitHub. I'll present the link later today as well. But let's open the IDE and do this change. And I'll start here with just showing the application that it is running. So it is here running in Glassfish 5, and you can see it has produced a hi there message. That was the CDI extension I showed you, and the result message is, as you can see, it says howdy Jakarta EE8. So it is up and running, and it works as it should. Let's go and look at the code, and then we'll start doing the migration. So as you can see, I'm using Java SE 1.8, and I also have Jakarta EE8 in my POM file. That's all I have here in the POM file. The application, the Jakarta Rest application, and this is, by the way, the same application I would be able to use in Jakarta E10 and using the SC Bootstrap API and just bootstrap this class. So it's an empty configuration class. It has a resource, and this is the CDI extension saying hi there in the log. It has the path hello, and it's using the Duke service EJB to find a greeting and just return it through and produce this to application JSON. The find greeting method is a stateless session bean, and the business logic around this is that it calls the Duke's repository, finds everything, and then finds the first, if there are any. If there aren't any, then I'll just hard-code it. So it's not very sophisticated business logic, but it's there. The repository is using, you can see I'm injecting the persistence context, and I'm using the Jakarta persistence criteria language to build the query where I'm doing just a select everything from the Duke's greeting class. And if I look at the Duke's greeting, this is my actual entity. It has an ID, a message, and an email, and getters and setters to that. So that's all there is about the application. The actual Duke's extension is just printing this message when it sees the Duke's annotation. So let's look at the list of what I'm supposed to do here. So what I have to do is first to update the Jakarta version in my POM XML. I'll open the POM, and I'll use the migration tool in the IDE. So I want to have both the old and the new there. So I'll update this one and use 9.1. There you go. So I have both 9 and 8 available in my POM file here. Then I'll take the refactor menu here and migrate Java EE to Jakarta EE. And I'll only do the complete Duke module of my project. And I'll do the migration here. So it's as easy as just choosing migrate to Jakarta EE, and it will do the refactoring for me. Of course, I could change everything manually, but this is far much easier. And here you can see the import statements are being fixed. And when that is done, I can remove the old dependency from my project, and also just reload my project so I get rid of the completion warnings. There you go. So here you can see the application is now converted to the Jakarta namespace. So that's fairly easy. So what I've done is to update the POM files, and then I fix the imports. What I also have to think of is the XML namespaces. And in my application, I have one XML file, and that is the persistence XML. And here you can see I'm using the old jcp.org namespace and Jakarta persistence 2.1. So what I have to do here, and here we're not changing JavaX to Jakarta. Here it is to change the jcp.org to Jakarta.ee. And I have to do it the schema location as well. Of course, this is certain place material, but I'll do it manually here in this talk. And you can also notice that we've changed from HTTP to HTTPS. And as has been practiced in Java EE and Jakarta EE, is to use the version of the specification in the actual schema file, so it's easy to find. And here you can see I'm getting a validation from the schema that I'm not using the correct version, so I have to upgrade it to 3.0, and now you can see it validates okay. So of course I could have just skipped the schema, but it's good practice to actually use the schema. I'll show that in a second. Because the next step is to rename the properties that I have in my application that are prefixed with JavaX. And I actually have a couple of these here. To populate the database with the message, I'm using this insert greetings SQL file. And I'm using the JavaX persistent schema generation properties. And here you can see since I'm using the schema, I'm getting code completion for this here in the ID. And these properties are prefixed with JavaX, so I have to change that to Jakarta. I don't have any more properties file, but typically you would search through your application and find those. I also have rename bootstrapping files. And in my case here, I have one bootstrapping file, and that is for the CDI extension. And the way CDI extensions are bootstrapped is to have a file called JavaX Enterprise Inject SPI extension, and just list the fully qualified class name of the extension there. And you can probably guess it by now that this has to be renamed to, yeah, you probably guessed right that JavaX is replaced with Jakarta. So the changes I'm doing are here and there, but they're fairly simple. And before I do the last step, I'll take this one and deploy it to Glassfish 6.2 and have a look at it. So I'll just add my application here. There you go, and then deploy it. And while it's deploying, we should just look for the message in the log saying hi there from Duke. Then we know that the CDI extension has worked. So it's building and it's being deployed. So see, there you go. So I'll just scroll to it. It says Duke's message is hi there. So let's check this application and see that it returns what we want to. And here on port 8080, I have Glassware 602 running. So I go to the complete Duke application and see that it says, howdy, Jakarta EE 8. So that is what I meant with the dynamic content. And in my case, it's just a simple message. But it could have been a let me just see here. There we go. Here, query console. There we go. It could have been that I was concatenating some strings to create some property names using JavaX, for example. So it could have been anything more complex than just a stupid message like this. So let's run this one. Well, it's connecting to my database. There we go. So it says, how did Jakarta EE 8? And let's change this one. And we're using 9.1 now. So let's change that. And I hope I can enter there and then publish it to the database. And now it should be displaying the correct message. So in my case, it's just this stupid hello message. But in your case, it could be that you're concatenating some strings using Jakarta or JavaX or something. So verify that your data, if you're building something dynamically, maybe doing some reflection or stuff, check that so you're not getting that error at startup. I want to show one more thing, and that is Java SE 17. So let's do some convert this to Java SE 17 and show how we can use that with Jakarta EE. So the first thing I'm going to do is to actually remove this stuff so I don't generate the database again and have to change the database, because then it would insert this how did Jakarta EE 8 text again, and I don't want to do that one more time. So I've done that. The next step I'll do is to switch to Jakarta EE, Java 17. So I'll just remove everything about 1.17, and I'll use the Maven compiler release, which you can use after I think it's 11 or 9, and set it to 17. I'll make sure it's updated. And then let's add some Java 17 support. And I know what I'm showing now actually didn't come in 17, it came in 16. But anyway, if you remember my application here, I'm exposing my database entity through the REST API, which is not a very good idea. So let's create a DTO here and so we don't expose everything through the database. And what I want to use here is records. So I'll create a record. I'll call it Dux reading record. Just make it very obvious. And this record should have a string, let's call it greeting, and it should have a local date. So there we go. So I've created this record, Dux greeting record. It has a greeting and a date. Let's return this from the Jakarta Rest endpoint. Just create return the Dux record like this. Then I need to go into the Dux service and change this one to return a record as well. And since this is where I have my business logic, I have now retrieved the Dux greeting entity from the database. I'll just map this one to the record. So I have my my entity here, and I'm creating a new Dux grading record. I'll get the entities message, and I'll use a local date of and if I don't find this this message, I'll just create a record here. I can use the high, but rather than undefined here, I'll use a local date of 2021 9/14, which was the release date of 17, I hope. So what I do here is to remove the exposure of my entity from my database and map it in my business layer and return it through the resource. So let's deploy this one to the server. Redeploy it here. So there you go. I think now it's still building. So while I'm doing this, you should ask yourself, do you think this will work? And put it in the chat if you think it will work or if you don't think it will work. And then I'll hit a refresh here and see what goes. And it's empty. And why is that? Why is it empty? So the reasoning why this is that the JSON binding expects the class that is being serialized to JSON to be obeying the Java bean pattern. So if you look at this Dux record, you can see that the access method that have been generated are called date and greeting. So if you want to fix this, very simple fix is actually to just call them get greeting and get date, which is kind of stupid, but it will get you there. If you then look at this one, the method would be get date and get greeting, which is what you would expect from a Java bean. Let's redeploy this one. And of course, I expect that the folks behind JSON specification will fix this to fully support Java 17 when that is being made the language level. And but until then, this is how you fix it. So with that, I think we can say that Java 17 works very well with Jakarta EE. It will work even better in the future, but it's still you can use it today. And of course, everything internal in your classes, like the multi-line text blocks or switch expressions, or can use anyway, because you want to interact with the APIs for them anyway. So you can they are fully supported. So the only places where we have to be a little careful is when you interact with the APIs that are on supporting the Java 11 language level when you're using Java 17 features. And records is one example. So to recap a little bit, Jakarta EE 9 is the version out there today. We lowered the entry barriers, we created a platform for innovation, and we made migration as easy as possible. The JavaX to Jakarta namespace change is a big thing, but it's not that hard. Just do it. Jakarta EE 10 is coming. It's a lot of new updates. It's a lot of work behind this. Some of them are backwards incompatible. Some of them are just minor updates. There are some new stuff and some tweaks here and there. But as you can see, most of the platform is getting an overhaul. We're introducing the new Jakarta EE core profile, which will make it possible to certify smaller runtimes and compiling them to native if needed. Jakarta EE 10 supports Java SE 11 language level, but the important thing is anything above 11. As long as your runtime supports it, you can use 17 or above. Here are some links. Go to Jakarta.ee. You can find everything you want to find there. Jakarta EE/specifications, or where the specifications are. And there are Jakarta Blogs is a blog aggregator. It's also published on Jakarta EE/blogs, and you can get your own blog there if you want. So if you're writing something about Java or Jakarta EE and you're not on Jakarta Blogs, check it out. It's very easy to add yourself. It's a pull request, and you can get your blog aggregated there. My blog is, of course, aggregated to Jakarta Blogs, but it's also on my domain, agilejava.eu. And I'll publish weekly updates called #Jakarta EE. All the demos are on my GitHub. It's called Jakarta EE Duke. And the example I showed here is called Complete Duke. And it has a step-by-step tutorial to go through all these migration steps that I showed here today. So with that, I thank you very much for listening. It's 51 minutes, and I hope, Leo, that you have some questions for me.
Yeah, so the demo of the migration triggered some questions. So I think I don't know, maybe you want to go back to the start of the demo, but they say here, why do you already have Jakarta in your transformations demo start?
Well, I already had Jakarta.
Yeah, I didn't notice. Yeah, when exactly that was shown.
What you probably mean is that I did have. Here is the poem. That I did have Jakarta EE, but what I had was Jakarta E8. I guess that is what
Jakarta E8 then uses the old namespace, and that's
Jakarta E8 was on the old namespace.
Yeah,
Jakarta E9 is on the new one. It would have been exactly the same here if I were using the JavaX 8.
Okay.
Java EE.
Yeah, the same process then. Yeah.
So it would be if we're in Java E8 or Jakarta E8, those are 100% compatible with each other. They're just repackaged with new group IDs.
Yeah, and about the third-party jars. So I guess that's a good question, because that touches the community support. So yes. What do you do, or is anyone taking care of these old packages that are not being maintained anymore, or do you have any suggestion or something like that?
Yeah. So if you're using some third party that you're not in control of the code. I mean, if the code if it's an open source third party and you can control it, you can just do a pull request to them or rebuild yourself and switch the namespace. But if it's on uncontrollable, that you only have the jar, then you can use these transformer tools and transform it and just add that as your dependency. It's not an ideal solution, but it should work.
It should work at bytecode level. So you may not be able to fully see the results, but you will be able to use the jar as they are.
And you can just unjar the file and have a look at the classes and see that it looks okay. So if you're interested, I have done this transformation on my YouTube channel. You can search for my name or search for Jakarta EE. You should be able to find, and if you can't find it, ping me and I'll point you in the right direction. We can even set up a session and do some transformation. It's fairly easy to use.
Okay. And I have a question of myself. So how would we run Jakarta EE core with cloud providers such as AWS Lambda? I don't know if they are covered by the specs, or is this just an implementation detail?
So it's an excellent question, and it is no different from how you can actually run a Lambda with a full Jakarta EE application server if you want. I mean, it's just a matter of packaging the right dependencies. It would probably not be a good idea, but
that's the question. So how do you set a platform, or how do you set this idea? So today I know that I can run Quarkus, and Quarkus
Hmm.
is a Jakarta EE implementer, as you pointed out in the beginning, but Quarkus is taking care of it. So with
Yeah.
the right handlers and everything. So it's like a Quarkus specific. It sounds more like a Quarkus specific thing than a
Yeah.
Jakarta EE level. So that's. Do you think that's should become part of the Jakarta EE because now everyone is doing it, or?
I think it's a very good solution. I've been for several years talking about that we should have some serverless support in Jakarta EE. I've even been talking about should we have Jakarta functions, or should we, so we can have this kind of a standardized way for application developers.
Yeah.
Because if you're creating serverless today, whether you're using Azure or AWS or Google or whatever else, you do it all differently. So have some standardization around
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
to look in. I think that would be an excellent idea for a new specification,
Okay.
and even maybe a new profile. Like the core profile is kind of targeting microservices. So for a Lambda, you would have something even slimmer, maybe a CDI Lite and some JSON here and there.
JSON and also storage. So most of the
Yeah,
times we also want to store something somewhere. All
exactly.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Good.
so, so maybe a new serverless profile or something like that could be something in the future. But all these ideas are excellent, and they need to be brought to us either by submitting an issue or mentioning it on the community mailing list, and then getting involved, and then we'll get the ball running. It's a
I'll
community
fire the
effort.
email then.
Yeah,
I'll be the igniter. I'll
yeah,
let you.
that's good.
I'll let you play.
Yeah,
All
excellent.
right. Any parting words? Because we're getting close to the top of the hour.
No, I think you pointed to a very good thing that if you have any ideas, if there are anything that you see missing or we're going in the wrong direction or something that you would have improved in Jakarta EE or Jakarta specification technologies, whatever, we are there. It's a community. It's very open. It's free to join. You just create a Eclipse account and you can start contributing with the pull request on the GitHub repos. All the code is in GitHub, so it's very easy to get started joining these things. And the first thing would usually be to join the mailing list and see what's going on, and then maybe pose a question or a suggestion and
Good
go
stuff.
from there.
All right. Again, thank you, Ivar, for the session. It was very informative, and I hope that our audience also liked it. And see you guys next time.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you very much.